Nick Fuentes speaks on the two National Guards getting shot. First of all, I want to send my heart out prayers to them. I heard they didn't make it, which is tragic. I don't understand why anybody would do that. That's pretty suicidal. To get sent to jail forever.
So this 29-year-old
let's watch this
Afghan
clip on
shoots
Nick speaking on the situation so we can speak on it.
two National Guardsmen. And people are going to read the name, which is Rahmanullah Lakanwal, and they're going to hear the national origin, Afghanistan. They're going to hear about how he arrived here, ostensibly as a refugee, apparently. And everyone's going to draw some conclusions about who this guy is. They're going to say this is a fanatical Muslim from a Muslim country that we went to war with. We went to war, we bombed them, we engendered hatred, then we brought them here. They hate us, and now they're killing us. He was motivated by his radical, fanatical religion, ideology. He shouted Allahu Akbar, killed Americans, and what we see is what we get. And that's one way to look at it. Maybe that's the case, because all that is true. He is effectively a refugee from Afghanistan, probably is a fanatical Muslim, or could be. Could be. It's plausible. He shot these Americans. They claim he yelled Allahu Akbar. So maybe he hates America. Maybe he hates what America is doing with Israel and Gaza. Maybe he hates what America did in Afghanistan. Who knows? Maybe it's PTSD. Maybe he, because he was a fighter or was involved with American forces in some way, maybe it's like PTSD. Who knows? But we have to understand exactly what this is. And a lot of people don't know that when the United States conducted its operation in Afghanistan over the last 20 years, we recruited support from the locals, the local tribes, militias, soldiers. We recruited the locals to help in many different capacities as we were fighting the conflict, as security forces, military forces, as translators, in a number of different roles. And this is why he was brought to America under the program. It's called Allies Welcome. Why is it called Allies Welcome? Because these are not just any refugees. These are not women and children. These are not fleeing refugees, not strictly speaking. Allies welcome. These are collaborators. These are collaborationists. These are not Afghans that were with the Taliban or ISIS-K. These are Afghans who were working with the United States military and special forces and probably working with them for many years and living with them and working with them and ostensibly supporting the goals of the American occupation. That's how we got here. Allies welcome. In 2021, when the Taliban retook control over the country, of course, everybody that was collaborating with the United States is going to be killed. The United States is fighting the Taliban for 20 years. We took power from them. We controlled Afghanistan. When we left, the Taliban filled the void. And actually, we beat a retreat. We were being defeated by the Taliban effectively. Taliban was taking over anyway. We could not maintain control of the country from a distance or indefinitely. And so everybody working with the United States was going to be probably captured and imprisoned or killed by the Taliban. So we brought all of our collaborators back to the United States because we owe them. We owe these people. Like we owe the Israelis, like we owe the Kurds, like we owe the Ukrainians. We owe these people in Afghanistan, so they say. So we bring this guy over under Operation Allies Welcome. And again, is this guy a fanatical Muslim? It would seem not, on the basis of how he came here. He didn't come here as a refugee. He came here basically as a U.S. mercenary. Big difference. He didn't come here as a refugee fleeing persecution and violence, although in a sense he was. He was fleeing persecution and violence because he was a U.S. government employee. That's why he was being persecuted. That's why he was fleeing. So he's really a U.S. government employee who was extracted from Afghanistan. He would continue living in Afghanistan if a friendly government remained. If we remained, he would still be there. He was extracted from Afghanistan by his patron that he was a client for, by his boss, the United States. That's how he came here. Not an ordinary refugee, not part of mass migration or anything like that. And so this changes how we look at the attack. Was this guy some Muslim extremist? Well, it would seem that would be unlikely because there are many Muslim extremists in Afghanistan. You've got ISIS-K, the Khorasan group. You've got the Taliban. You got the Pakistani and the Afghan Taliban. You've got Balochistan and the separatists over there. You've got a lot of sectarian violence. You've got a lot of ethnic, tribal, religious violence in this region. Afghanistan is really not a real country. It's a hodgepodge of a bunch of different tribes and ethnicities. You've got Turks, you've got Pashtun, you've got a lot of different kinds of people living there. And so it would seem that if this guy was working with the United States, probably he was not a fanatic. Probably he was not a radical Muslim, a Taliban supporter, an ISIS supporter, because he would have been working with the enemy of those groups. He's a U.S. mercenary. So who is this guy really? The family says they're surprised because they said he loved the United States. So is this a Muslim refugee that killed Americans for Islamism? Or is this a former U.S. service member who went off for some reason? And it raises some questions. Understanding this, you might wonder, so this is not, Rahmanullah, the Taliban member. This is Rahmanullah, the government employee. What did they do to this guy? Who is this guy? It begs the question, did they put him up to this? If he was being handled by the U.S. military, what is their responsibility in all this? Because you do hear about false flags and you do hear about these kinds of things. And right now, it is true that there's a lot of chaos and violence in the Middle East. It's also true that Israel and the United States have far-reaching geopolitical ambitions there. Israel wants territory in a number of countries. They want Gaza and the West Bank to be absorbed. They want South Lebanon. They want South Syria. They want regime change in Iran. They want operations in Yemen and Syria and Iraq. And the United States wants its air base in Bagram back. That's what the Trump administration said. They said if he were president, we wouldn't have even fully left Afghanistan. We would have kept the base at Bagram. Why? Why is it important for the United States to have a military base in Afghanistan? Does anybody know? A lot of people don't look at a map. A lot of people don't know their geography, and that's the problem. The reason the United States wants a military base in Afghanistan is because Afghanistan shares a border with China. That's why. And specifically, Afghanistan borders East Turkestan, which is where all those troublesome Uyghur Muslims are from. And so if you wanted to spy on China, if you wanted a foothold to project power against China in Central Asia, if you wanted to monitor some of the border disputes or things going on, if you wanted to monitor their activities, maybe you wanted to foment chaos in China, form a land bridge, not just with China, but with their most troublesome population, through Afghanistan might be the way to do it. And of course, all the infrastructure of Bagram could just as easily be used against China as much as it is used against Pakistan or Iran or the Taliban or ISIS-K in the region. That's why they want the base back. And so what has happened since 2021 is the Taliban retook control of the country. The United States lost the foothold there. And now Afghanistan is the gateway for Central Asia into the Indian Ocean. And the Taliban stands to gain from critical mineral wealth. They stand to gain from trade routes through Central Asia. And the United States maybe doesn't want the Taliban to have that kind of leverage and discretion. They don't want the
Chat, this dude, I guess he's from the Middle East, but he worked for the government. I mean, it's only one way to explain this. There's a lot of people that don't like what the National Guards are doing in D.C. I wonder if he's one of those that think the National Guard shouldn't be in D.C. and he's attacking them. I don't know, but we can look at it like that. Another thing I want to say is he just like, did the government turn on him? Did they stop paying him? Did they like fire him? You know, it's a lot of possibilities. It's a lot of answers that needs to be answered. But it's really weird that this dude used to work for the government. He's not like a Taliban, like a person from the Afghanistan that was with ISIS or the Taliban. he was not part of them. That he was actually helping the U.S. military. I guess he was a spy, but for him to actually turn on the government and shoot at two National Guards, that's very questioning. It brings up a lot of questions like, why is he doing it? But appreciate y'all checking out. Please like, comment, subscribe. We're gonna be back with some more content. We out.